Greetings, joining us live and those tuning into the show in the replay. You are tuned in to the next episode, episode 21 of The Critics. I'm your host for this journey, this conversation today. I'm Vinay Raman. And the first thing I'd like to do is go to the comment panel on the right. It's usually on your right-hand side. And what I'd like to hear from you is, are you joining us live or are you joining us in the replay? If you're joining us live, type in pound live. Or if you're in the replay, type in pound replay. It helps us understand who is chiming in and what are they saying, so we can help guide the conversation for not only today's conversation, but for future topics. So go to that comment box on the right-hand side. It's usually on the right, and type in live if you're joining us on this live episode. So I want to start out first with what I'll call a thought-worthy question. It has a lot to do with our topic today. Have you ever wondered what barricades your path to being a top-tier leader? I will tell you, it's been a riddle for me. It's been a challenge for me. And the point of this podcast is to embody not only some of what I've learned, but also with our panel, drawing on some of their expertise and what they've done that has helped people achieve that top-tier leadership. And this podcast is one dimension of that. You know, many times in the past, I've wondered if I could just snap my fingers and turn into a more effective leader. I don't know if it was that easy for me. And it took a little while to figure out some of those things, some of those strategies and processes to do that. So I'd love to hear from the audience here. First question I got for you is, have you ever had a day where you just wondered, could I snap my fingers and become a better leader? I would love to hear that in the comments. So please type into the comments a Y or a yes, if that's something that's ever occurred to you. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Vinay Raman. I've got 27 years working in the technology industry, artificial intelligence, machine learning, mathematics, computer science. And I'm currently the CEO at Karma and the host of this show. But I want to do a real quick check-in with my panel here. I'll start first with you, Lester. Can you hear me? How are you today?
I gotcha. I'm great. I hope you are.
I'm doing fantastic. Next, Sherry, how about you? Loud and clear. How's life in your part of the world?
I love how I picked you.
Yeah.
I like that.
I'm the better looking one.
What's up? What's happening?
So, Lou, we're going a little out of order here. I asked Sherry, but I've got a question for you that's going to throw a little bit of a monkey wrench at you, right? This whole conversation was this idea of profitability and the secret to keeping your employees focused on track. Yeah. When I say that, or when you first thought of this topic, what was the favorite thing, or what kind of came up for you when you were thinking about this topic in the discussion? What did you think about?
Well, I think it's very interesting how it starts off with the word profitability, but ends with employees focused and on track. Because the issue is, realistically, what do we consider profitability? I'm a firm believer that how we think about profitability is what determines the path we take and how we lead and manage our employees. So that's what I really pulled out of that topic. I thought that title was fitting because it could really mean multiple things. So I'm looking forward to diving in a little bit.
I'd like to ask a question for the comments. I would love to hear, what are the first thoughts that came to mind when you heard this topic? We had a record number, I think 351 people who signed up for this event. Please share in the comments. What first came to mind when you heard this topic? Was it the same thing that Lou said, or something else? While you're doing that, I'd like to introduce our panelists to give you a little more background and tell you a little bit more about why I have them here and why I think this is going to be a fantastic episode. I'm going to start with you, Lester. Lester is highly regarded as the employee benefits industry's most influential entrepreneur. I will agree with that. I was actually just with Lester last week out in Denver. Both of us were speaking at a conference. His personal purpose is for solving the healthcare crisis, and how it's been really a challenge for so many people, business owners, as well as the people in leadership and management, as well as the employees themselves. And how can we make a more positive impact around it? Now, he is a natural at speaking. He speaks to lots and thousands of people. He's a marketing visionary, podcast host. He runs his own company called Next Impact LLC. But part of the reason I brought Lester here today is someone might ask, why do you have somebody who's spending time in healthcare or in and around benefits on a conversation about this? It's about alignment and congruence. That's the thought that came to mind for me. How do we get people to say, this is a place where I want to show up at work tomorrow? Lester, I'm kind of curious a little bit. What do you think about that? I mean, it seems like that's what your experience is all about. Your experience, what you've been doing is about trying to build workplaces where people want to show up. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and I think it boils down, Vinay, on why people even choose an employer, right? I mean, if you talk about profitability, you can't have profitability without having employees. And so as an employer, you have to think about what is your value proposition that you are offering to your employees. And outside of their paycheck, benefits is the second largest expense, number one. So when we talk about profitability, something that's hugely impacting profitability. But when we think about probably one of the most confusing things that people have to deal with in their lives is health insurance and health care. And when you think about it, most employers, most people running businesses want to put their heads in the sand and not have to deal with it. It's confusing. It's hard. I don't understand it. I hear all these different things, and it's change management. But whether or not they like it, whether they want to deal with it or not, every company is in the healthcare business because it's such a big line item on their expense. So that's the biggest thing. I think the correlation on this with, people focused and keeping them on track. It's how you get them in the door in the first place and making sure that you show them the types of things that you want to as that employee. People want to work for people that they feel attached to, that there's a mission, that there's a purpose. And so it is just a hugely congruent, to use your word, conversation.
I want to thank you for that, Lester. I want to kind of go to we got some people chiming in already in the comments. Joe Everett says live, pound live. Clinton Dean says live. Mohammed Jawad Aslam says live. Paul says live. We've got a couple of comments in here. Clinton Blessing both say yes to having wanted to snap their fingers. And Joe says the first thing that came to mind to me was discussing some insights on employee experience and leveraging improvements there to increase retention and focus. I think that's something I would like sort of for our panel here to kind of keep in the back of your mind. I think that's a central concept that I would like to discuss. Blessing says, I wanted to find out the secrets of keeping employees focused and on track. Clinton says, initial thought was, how can I better lead from the middle? Also a huge fan of Lester. Aren't we all? I appreciate everyone typing these into the comments. I think this is already starting to shape some of the conversation. So as you hear things that either Lester, Sherry, or Lou say, me too, if you think it's interesting, type it into the comments. I would love to help guide that conversation by questions that you ask, the comments that you put in there. I want to go back and introduce the dynamic duo over here of Sherry and Lou. Sherry and Lou, have you ever been called the dynamic duo before?
Hey, I believe we have.
Okay, all right. I may have just dated myself with a Batman reference.
I won't tell on you,
man. So Sherry and Lou both run something called the Lou Everett Group. I've known Sherry and Lou for a number of years now, and they're seasoned leadership trainers with over 4 decades of combined experience. They love serving people and companies throughout their growth transitions, regardless if you're kind of a single person, a solopreneur, or at the C-suite level in a larger organization. Leadership is all about influence, and it's not more than that. It's not less than that. It's just about influence. Why I have Sherry and Lou here is they're always thinking about how to build continuity plans, how to think bigger, how to resolve current struggles, and how to up-level your leadership thinking and mindset, maybe even heart set to do that. Lots of times we come into companies because maybe of the benefits or whatever that job situation is. So we come in because it's creating an environment. It's got a vision that we want to join, but it's the management that kind of drives us out the door. I want to stop there a little bit. I feel like Sherry and Lou, this is your domain. How does that sit with you in terms of your ability to reflect on leadership and how it creates that space for people to want to stay?
That's a fully loaded question. Now, we talked earlier how we can talk for 7 hours. That is a topic we can talk about, right? Here's the reality of it, though, and I'm going to jump in. Well, first I want to say that Sherry is really the Lou Ever group. Okay, I'm just throwing this out there to everybody. She's the group, but I love. I'm like Lester. I like to talk, so I'll jump in here on this one. But I think that being a leader is something that I want to make sure we understand. That it's not about position, it's not about title. We can get that anywhere. It's about leading people. Lester mentioned earlier about if you don't have people, you have no one to lead, right? That's realistically what we teach and what we believe. But that being said, let's look at really the deep things here. I'll jump right into the challenging things, the things that we don't like to talk about, and that is one of these items is we have 5 generations in the workforce today. So asking a question of how can we keep employees focused and on track, that's a very blanketed phrase, right? We've got so many different types of individuals that we lead. So it becomes a very personal relationship. It becomes a very personal mission of ours as a leader to identify how it is that we can motivate, how it is that we can help our employees to maintain our focus, maintain and be on track. And yeah, bringing them in, it starts right there. What kind of benefits do we have to offer? What are the things that keep their feet sunk in and give them purpose and mission? But that might hit one generation. It doesn't hit all. So realistically, leadership is all about us learning as a leader, developing ourselves as a leader, being self-aware as a leader, be able to develop and learn and teach other people to become better versions of themselves. That's really where it begins. That's how where we stand on that.
Lester, I saw you heading on there. I want to give you a second to talk about that, but I actually do want to ask some people. I mean, we have had a couple people who've chimed in. I'd love to hear from others. What else were you thinking when you heard this topic? What caused you to take time out of your day to join? Because this has got to be something that's important to you. I'm really curious what about the topic was interesting to you, or what are your initial thoughts? Lester, I want to come back to you on that idea. 5 generations. One size fits all doesn't work. I think I've pretty much just thrown your softball right there.
Yeah. And that could be taken in a host of different ways. How do we communicate? How do we encourage? You take baby boomers, right? And the tough love, aspect of how they, and even, I'm an Xer. Actually, my birthday is tomorrow. We were in I got to think that the tough love, mom and dad didn't, there wasn't no 8th place trophy. You won or you lost. Now you look at the younger generations and it's like, we can't use red pen when grading papers because red makes people feel bad. I mean, when you start thinking of, how to keep employees focused and on track and knowing that drives a significant amount of your profitability. I mean, how you communicate, how you encourage, how you recognize, how you even set up your office. I mean, think of what post-COVID in the work from home environment. Some people love it. Some people are getting divorced from it. Some people are, walking their dog and doing their laundry all day. And so when you look at it, you hit the nail on the head. There is no one size fits all. And as an organization, as leaders, you have to be okay in the unknown and navigating and knowing that tomorrow is going to be a different day than today. And it's going to bring a whole nother challenge. But if you think that you're going to ride that road that you rode yesterday and that it's just not going to happen, period, the end.
So I think that's a key question I'd like to ask everyone to kind of go to the comments and share with me this question that I have for you. How do you know 5 generations is what Lou said, and I think Lester was just reflecting that there's no one size fits all. How do you, as a leader in an organization today, find out what everybody needs? How many different groups? I'd love to hear in the comments what practices, what procedures do you go through to figure out that, hey, I've got 4 generations, 5 generations. Do they all think the same? Because I just went to my kids. My oldest kid is started their first year of high school, and one of the teachers was talking through their whole grading policy. And I about fell out of my seat when they told me a little bit about how they're doing the grading. It's basically that you can't fail the class if you show up to all the classes. I was like, holy crap, if that was the bar for me in high school, I probably wouldn't have had to repeat a bunch of classes. I just had to show up. I did that. I just didn't pay attention. And they said, yeah, you'll get a 70 just for showing up to every class. And if you turn something in late, and they talked about all these things. I was like, I looked at my wife as I was about to fall out of my seat saying, gosh, I wish I had it this easy. But they also talked about how the kids today, the younger generations, have a different expectation of how they're supposed to be talked to and treated. I'm not saying better or worse. It's just different. I want to say one last thing here. And that is, as we go through this, we're going to start to show you some graphs, some visualizations based on data. And the whole point of that is to start to give you a snapshot into an individual so you can start to see how they're different, even people in the same role, how they appear differently. So we can start to make some value-based judgments on how we could lead them through these situations. Sherry and Lou, I want to come back to you all real quick. One size fits all is nice because I can write, here's my policy for one size fits all, and I'm just going to do that. And because I will tell you, as an entrepreneur, having started multiple companies, execution is my thing. You write it down, I'll get it done. But we're talking about 5 different generations and a different fit for each one of them. First thing that comes to mind is complicated. Does it have to be that way?
Well,
I'm not giving you the easy questions, Lou.
Hey, listen, I'll reverse it, because realistically, who was the one that accepted the responsibility of becoming a leader in the first place? So if we accept the responsibility of becoming a leader, then we take the responsibility and the burden of that responsibility to value the people enough to know what it is that fits them. That's up to us. Now, yeah, okay, well, I never got my training. I never got trained as a leader. I was just thrown in because I was a top performer. Well, first of all, great job for being a top performer. And you're not alone. That's what happens. But it's not an excuse for non-performance as a leader. It just isn't. Because as a leader, it's time for us to look for ways to become better. If your people are not, if you are not profiting from your people, meaning getting the bottom, whether it's the bottom line or getting productivity or communication effective, whatever that might look like for you, if that's not happening and your goals are not being accomplished because of the team or the person, it's your responsibility to identify what that is. How is that happen? If you don't know where to begin, well, you've got a room full of people here that can help you do that. That's ultimately where it begins there. So I know answering your question was not what you're looking for in that capacity, because realistically, if I take a box this small and I go over to the UPS store and I give them an item like a vehicle or a bike and say, pack this up for me in this little box, they're going to look at me like I've got 5 heads, right? That's what happened. But what do we want, though? What do we want in the corporate environment? We want to go in and we want to say, give me the cookie cutter solution and I'll implement it. Well, I'm sorry to tell you that, but that's from the 1970s playbook of leadership. We're not there. We're long gone, way past it. We've broken it. We've demolished it. We've torn it apart. It's time now to redevelop and recreate that. And that takes time. It takes effort. It takes time. You'll be tired. You will sweat at times. There'll be things and decisions you have to make that you don't like. There'll be conversations that you don't like to have that you have to have. But it can all be done effectively where the people can walk away or come at you because they want to, not because they have to. That's the point. Is getting the results that you're looking for, because that's what those individuals want to do, and they want to follow you. They want to implement what you want, not because they have to. That's where the rub is. That's where the challenge is, and that's what a leadership really is all about.
You know, Vinay, I wanted to add something to that, because I think if as a leader you don't point out where you're going, what's the mission, right? And I think that's why when we talk about, mission to line and having one and making all decisions that get us closer, no matter if you have 4 generations, 5 generations, no matter if they speak different languages, no matter if everybody can look and say, we're going in that direction, and I chose to join an organization because of the direction that they are going, and then therefore all decisions cascade to what Lou's saying. Yeah, you're going to have some tough conversations, but the tiebreaker, the overcomer of that obstacle is we're all rowing in that direction. What gets us closer to that direction? And so I think as a leader, it's really important to, have a mission, have a statement, have a purpose that everybody knows and you ingrain in them every single day. And it just allows you to have way more, you use the word congruency, alignment, whatever word we want to use.
And most
Joe,
people actually like that. They want to be a part of something, no matter what it is. We all want to have some type of, comfortableness. And if you have that mission and everybody's pointing to that North Star, as I like to say, then that's where everybody's going to row the boat and all the same way. If you don't, the boats are going to keep going in circles, and then we get frustrated, and then there's layoffs, and everybody gets mad, and there's this whole negativity. So it is so important that that everybody's on the same page, and everybody's important as well. And every role is important, no matter how big or small that it is.
I love how you use the boat analogy. Okay, and Vinay knows this, and I know Vinay we need to get on so I want to see what you got for the grass here. But I'm going to use this boat analogy because there's, as an example, there is a locally here there is an event that happens every year where there's like this boat race, and it's a team event. So you can bring your team there. You get in this boat and you learn. There's, I don't know, 15, 20 of them in there, and you learn how to row together as a team. But there's always someone at the head, and there's always someone there providing rhythm. And here's the thing about that. They always have a how-to or training before they reach the boat. So they all know the purpose, the mission, how to. So we can have purpose and have mission all we want. We can have core values all we want. What we're challenged with here is we bring employees in and we expect them to understand how to get to those core values when they don't have them to begin with, or maybe they do, they need to sharpen them, or the mission. How are we getting to the mission? So we might have all of those things, but the steps to get there is where we as leaders come in and set the example and provide a path for them to make that happen.
So I think that was like a perfect segue. I'll send the $20 bill in the mail here shortly. I want to bring up some graphs. I want to bring up some slides. So Janine, if you can bring that screen up, I'd like to get us to see some of these, because I'll tell you, as an individual, you could give me all the theory in the world in school, and I loved it. But until I was able to get into physics class and start banging, crashing, and demolishing stuff together, the light bulb didn't go off in my head. So I'd like to show you some real examples here that we can start to dissect. So the topic here was, we had to abbreviate it because of the length here, but it's profitability, the secret to keeping your employees focused and on track. You can go to that next slide for me, Janine. One thing I want to tell you is you're going to go through this. We're going to start to give you some snapshots here, and you're going to walk away from this. All right, what do I do next here? I've got some ideas. I'd like to tell you that there's an assessment that we do that'll give you a snapshot. You're going to see some of these snapshots here in a little bit, but you'll have an opportunity to get those assessments, those visual snapshots that you're going to see in a second here, completely for free for being part of this podcast today. So just watch out for that. You got to stick around until the end, and we'll share that with you. On this next slide, can you make that full screen for me? I want to share something with, and this is the graphic that we use many times to explain to people what's happening here. And you'll see around the horn here, around this kind of circular graph, this web graph, you see a bunch of different metrics. It could be driver behavior and efficiency, tech referring, skills assessment, priority alignment. I'll tell you, that kind of doesn't matter, right? Because every business has KPIs and metrics or key performance indicators that they measure for their employees. What does matter is how people are performing against those standards. When you start to understand how they're performing against those standards, it starts to tell you where they need help. And this is exactly what you were talking about, Lou. You can tell them, here's where we're going, but they don't necessarily know how to get there. And that is what you have the opportunity to do here. So if you take a look at this just a little more deeply here, you see that little blue dot that's out towards the left-hand side around 10 o'clock. That dot is out towards the edge, the blue dot. You want lots of blue. That means that particular person is really effective in their tech referring, which is like referring jobs back in. That's part of their sales role in their job. The blue dots that are closer into the center means they're less effective there. They need some more support. That dark gray, which is slightly bigger than a lot of those blue dots, is what the average is. So you can see where people, through this graph very quickly, and this is part of that assessment you'll have access to later, it very quickly tells you where people are, where they're very strong and where they're struggling. Let's go to another slide here because I want to talk about a specific example. This one's a little hard to see just because the blue and the gray are so well aligned. The blue is the employee and the gray in this case is their direct supervisor. If you can see that, those two people are really highly aligned. I want to ask panel here, Lou, Sherry, Lester. You see two people that on all 7 dimensions of where we focus our time and priority as an organization. What would you expect out of an employee who's got this level of alignment with their boss?
They're a high achiever. I mean, when we start thinking of my expectation as a leader to, my team, if you asked us both the same questions and we came back and said roughly the same answers, I have to draw the direct correlation, right? Of full alignment, therefore probably good results, or at least the results I did or didn't indicate to that person that I expected of them. I think where this thing goes awry, I got to imagine, Vinay, is when you've got them all skaggled, right? And somebody says, I think this is the most important, and I think this is the most important. And it's really interesting to ask in live meetings, right, this same kind of thing, and then have people say the answers when they look at each other like, I didn't realize that was our goal and objective. And CFO looks at the CEO and HR is in the room, and you do this live, and it's like, well, first you got to ask the lowest ranking official, because once the boss says what the boss thinks, then everyone's going to follow suit. But this is a darn good, in my opinion. I would look at this and say, hey, leader, nice job.
Yeah, Lou and Sherry, I was going to ask you, so from a leadership coaching point of view, I mean, if you've got this level of alignment, what does it tell you about that leader?
This might shock you a little bit, so I'm going to dive in. I'm going to jump into this real good here. First of all, yes. I mean, an initial glance, right? Everything that you get result-wise from any data, and Vinay, you know this, you're the data expert here, and we rely upon you a lot for these types of things. So I appreciate what you do, because I can't do this part. But what I can do is when I look at this, what this is telling me now is like, yes, initial glance says that this employee is performing as they should, right? Because we've set the standard. They're performing in all those should areas. So the leader is communicating that to them. This is where you should be. This is where we expect you to be. And this is how we measure. Great. There's 2 challenges with that I'm seeing. Number one on the employee side, number one on the leadership side. The employee side, they're not exceeding. In my opinion, they're really not doing any more than they're expected to do, which is not a problem, but it depends on what role we're looking for. Are we looking for somebody innovative, somebody who's going to be stretched a little bit, someone who's going to show a little bit more outside the box thinking, or more of that type of thing? This employee is obviously satisfied with what they do. They're not really being stretched. They're not being challenged. They may have been there for a while, so they know their job really well, and it becomes very routine. Okay. So what are we doing to challenge this employee, and how long are they going to do this over and over again before they're going to find something else because we're not providing them ample opportunity? That's one question. On a leadership side, I'm like, what am I doing as a leader to stretch this person? I mean, they're literally in the lines. They're not going outside of these boundaries at all. So I really can't use them as they're a good example of what to do, but not a good example of how far to go to be better. They're not a really good example of creating new opportunities or new ideas, because everything's in the line. And so it's all good. Not that it's bad, and they might have good reviews, but there's no exceeding expectation.
So I want it to just be noted for the record that anybody who's listening in here in the audience, that I do not bring people to the show who are just going to agree with me. I bring people who are going to say, well, this may not be what you were thinking, but I'm going to tell you anyway. And actually, I love that, because I think you bring up an incredibly good point, right? How much are they pushing this? But this is the almost easy person to forget, because they're doing everything right. hey, let's put them on a shelf. Let's go focus on someone else. And we'll do that here in a little bit. This one might be what I'll call the easy one because there is so much alignment. Joe Everett says, great alignment in this graph. And if you notice the communication aspect is higher than average, I imagine that plays a key part in how well aligned this is. I got to imagine this is probably that manager's favorite employee because it's just easy peasy. Like, hey, how you doing today, Lou? I'm doing great. See you next week, right? And that's probably the way that conversation goes.
Right. Which is actually incorrect to do. And I'll tell you why.
In the long term, I agree. Yeah.
Just real quick, I mean, the reason why is because, okay, that's good. You give them kudos to keep doing what they're doing, but then the person's going to be complacent and they're going to get comfortable, and then they're going to start eventually possibly slipping in the other direction. So if there's not a challenge, if there's not stretching, which Lou was mentioning, you're going to have a very complacent person. So you have your A, B, and C people, and we all need them, no matter where they are on the chart. But don't forget, just because an A player, you still need to nurture them and grow them and stretch them. Yes, the C's and D's do need a little bit more attention, but don't forget about the A's and B's. They need your, the attachment. They need to keep growing. So, and if you're looking for the bottom line, so you can get more profitable.
I want to add on that, the interesting work, I'm dealing with this right now. This goes back to understanding. So we said, hey, 5 generations, like, how do you know? Like, this goes back to, hey, what does that employee want? Right. Sure. So, to what Sherry and Lou were saying, like, yeah, we're not stretching, but if this is that person that at 5:01, their chair's spinning and that's what they want because they're a soccer mom, soccer dad, and they want to make sure that they're home at that time and they don't want to take home on work on the weekends and whatever, like, I really push my team. Not everybody wants, not everybody has that goal and objective inside of the office. We all want it as leaders because they're like, don't you want more? Don't you want to, especially salespeople, don't you want to make more money? Like, make 100 more calls or, whatever it is. But if this person's like, my job satisfaction is 100% because I love that I know what to do. I come into work, I do a good job. Nobody really bothers me. I put my headphones in, I work from home. And at 5:01, my chair is spinning because I am off the clock. Then you got a home run. But to Lou and Sherry's point, if this is maybe it's a younger person and they're killing it and no one's asking them to take on more responsibility, that's the person that's going to get that, timely call from a recruiter that says, that down the street, they're looking for somebody just like you. And you're going to get a bigger title and $1 more an hour. And next thing you know, you lost this great employee. So you got to communicate even if you're scared of the answer. And I think as leaders, sometimes we don't ask the question because we're scared of the answer.
I love where this has gone because I think lots of times people will look at this and just are on surface level say, oh, this is easy. Next. And what you all are touching on here is really important because you're right. It might be someone who's 5 years out of college and that's fine, right? But 5 years out of college, maybe there's something more in their life that life holds for them that may change in their marital status. So they may have, they may have a new child. All of a sudden, to your area, benefits, right? And managing those benefits, that person's going to need something else. Their life has changed. Just because they're aligned right now does not mean tomorrow that they will be. And this just gives you, I can rest for right now. Let me ask the next question to go forward. And I think that's what I'm hearing from everyone, right? Janine, I'd like to go to the next slide. I think we've got another graph to show everyone. And Joe chimed in. There has to be a healthy tension between comfort and discomfort. Now, Joe, I think you said that perfectly. Janine, is there a way we can zoom in on this a little bit? So that last one was talking more about sort of the alignment, right? We have an assessment where we ask the employee and we ask the direct manager, how do they look at things? How do they rack and stack them in terms of priority? This one right here is more about actual performance in their role, right? You've got driver behavior. So in this particular example, you've got people who drive vehicles, service vehicles for their job. Again, the metrics don't matter here because each type of business has their own type of metrics. In this business, they wanted driver metrics. They wanted the efficiency of that person in that role, the employee experience, a qualitative question, NPS, which is a net promoter score, their priority alignment, which is what we just showed you, skills assessment, and tech referring, their ability to refer jobs back in. So look, you can see this. and hopefully already seeing very quickly the blue and the gray don't match up. Let me ask Lester and Lou. I'd like for you all to tell me what you think, but those listening in, I'd love to hear what you're seeing here. You saw that first one. What pops into mind as soon as you see this? The blue's not covering all the gray, so there's some areas where they're not doing as well. Lou, Sherry, Lester, what's going through your mind as you see this?
That's it. They're fired. Sorry,
I'd love to. I'd really like to see a couple of team members on this team, just out of curiosity. And the reason I say this is because what I'm seeing here, honestly, is that all but efficiency, this person is hitting the mark or above it, just about, right? They're well above it, especially when it comes down to their clients loving them, so all of these, but efficiency of all things. And so to me, it's more about just a small little understanding. And we go back to what Lester had mentioned before, communicating, as identifying this, right? That's really ultimately what this is all about, is what versus the, hey, we really gotta have hard conversation with this person, but maybe there's something else, right?
Like, it happens all the time.
There's more to the story.
It's laughable because we see this as a bigger picture, but how many managers have we worked with that are just, they see something, they look at the bottom line, and they're like,
right.
They look at that number and they're like, oh, that's it, the person's got to get written up, and that's just only a piece of the puzzle. And we have to be, as leaders, of actually open our mouths and actually have a conversation with your people.
Find out what they're doing. Yeah. And efficiency for this particular employee variable could be, hey, you're maybe following steps out of line. We need to readjust how you're doing it. Let me shadow you. Let me see how you're doing these things. Because efficiency obviously is not affecting how their clients feel about them. Maybe they're spending too long at the clients. That's why they love them so much. Who knows, right?
I want to bring, and I actually want to touch on that specifically, Lester, because we're talking about the bigger picture here, right? We're talking about this idea of how do we keep them focused and on track. This person seems to be focused in many different areas, maybe just not one area. Lester, benefits, right? This person is doing so well in all these different dimensions, right? Not one. The benefits bring in a whole nother dimensionality of how we draw this person to keep them saying, yeah, I want to be here. I want to stay. I'm going to stay hungry. I want to stay at this organization. Is that the right way of thinking, Lester, in terms of using that benefits think to build a better space for that person to move into?
Yeah, I think, I thought the same thing with Lou. I'm like, I live down in Puerto Rico, so we got a culture of, a lot of talky, warm and fuzzy. I look at this, let's say this person was a server at a restaurant and they've got 5 tables. Well, when they're at my table having a conversation with me and they're here 8 minutes, I love them. They've made me feel warm. They've made me feel welcome. They've talked every menu item. They've told me their opinion that their grandma cooks the same meal during Christmas and all of that stuff. And then they go to have that same conversation with everybody else. So efficiency, this person sucks because they only got 5 turns of their table because they spent 20 minutes. So, I first asked myself, right, does this person know, the output that they're supposed to have? Because that NPS score, would you recommend this company, this person to somebody else? Most of the people are saying yes. So it would be hard to look at this person and say, no. And so to your point, right, like how does the entire employer value proposition for this employee go? Like, how are they compensated? This person might not necessarily care about commissionable dollars, meaning like they might not want to be under a role that production, right, do more of something. So this person definitely, to me, isn't a salesperson, isn't somebody that needs to be measured on getting through, a task. But man, you bring in a group and you tell somebody to take care of it. This is that person. And so how do you reward and recognize total rewards, right? This person, I look at it and it needs to be a well-rounded, because I don't know, if you told this person you'd make more money if you were more efficient, they might not like it. So it might not necessarily be somebody that throwing them a couple extra dollars makes sense, but it's definitely seems like it's a mama or papa bear right? And so when you think about that total rewards, things that allow them to take care of themselves, take care of their families, take care of it, it seems to be right up this person's alley. Again, just looking at this, this chart.
Yeah, bringing leaders in. I think that's a very valid point. From the leader perspective now, right? Let's get to the fix, because the fix to something like this, honestly, is not that difficult. Because when this is given us for me as a leader, I'd say, well, I just have to have a conversation. And that's why I asked before. It's like, I would like to see the other teams, what they look like. Because if you find that this is similar, then I would sit this person down and say, do me a favor. Of all the things that we have to check off as you're doing what you're doing every day, what you're expected to do, is there anything in this process that you think needs to be changed or swapped, or are you changing anything yourself already in this process? Because maybe they're changing something in a process that works for everybody else, but now it's not working for them because they've changed something and they begun using it and become habit, and this is what's causing the efficiency challenge, right? It's more of a conversation on identifying behavior, identifying how they're thinking about what it is that they're doing. I used to tint windows when I was in high school. All right, I tinted windows. And when I was first learning how to tint windows, I sucked at it really bad. And so I couldn't do nearly as many windows as Mike, the friend of mine who was working that did it every single summer. And that dude can just rattle through windows and tint windows. This is inside, not car windows, these are in buildings, right? So my efficiency was terrible. I sucked at it. Everyone loved me. The clients loved me. I was like, I didn't do really good. I'm going to do this again. I'm sorry about it. They loved me. But I was terrible at efficiency because I was just learning. So there's something in the process that they're just learning,
That actually calculates, Lou. It makes sense. That doesn't surprise me at all. Lou, you are really good at a bunch of stuff. Here's sorry, I didn't actually mean to interrupt you in the middle of the flow, but here's something I wanted to say. There is just this idea that I love how this conversation is coming together, because basically I think what we're doing is sort of, to some degree, exploding the title, right? It says profitability, the secret to keeping your employees focused on track. What we're starting to say here is that every single employee has a different story, has a different set of needs and strengths, right? And as you can start to see it here visually, we're asking you're saying, I want to see some other people in this role, right? I want to understand more about what this person is. Is there more that this person is leaving on the table? Is there more capacity for that individual in that role to do more than just match the stride that I'm going at? And I love that, because I think what we're basically saying here is distilling is this idea that you got to look at each individual person and understand where they are. Visually just helps you very quickly understand where they are. Is that a fair statement?
Got to meet them where they are in order to get them where they need to be.
Right. And going back to the title, I know some of us are focused on the literally employee focused and on track, but getting back from the beginning, for me, the key word was the secret. And I think sharing and tapping into what's the secret sauce. When it's really not that complicated, we just sometimes don't want to think that it's that simple.
Ever get your eyes checked? It's like that, right? You get your eyes checked, right? You're sitting there in the chair, and they put this crazy contraption in front of your eyes and trying to get the right person. Now, I could very well try to do that myself. I don't know what I'm doing, right? I can't get focused. That's the doctor's job, to help me get focused. Once I'm locked in to get focused, now I'm on track. Now I can see where I'm going. As a leader, we are that, right? We need to put that machine in front of them. We need to dial it in and help them identify what that looks like. And this is what helps us do it.
So here's what I'd like to do. I want to put something up on screen here. If you would like to see a graphic similar to this in your organization, Janine, can you bring that up on screen? I'd like to offer anybody who's been watching this the opportunity to do this. We've created a employee satisfaction and retention assessment, just another dimension of your people, your employees. It's completely free. We usually charge for this, but anybody who's joined this episode, if you go to that assessment, when you click the link, if we can drop the link into the comments here, or you can go directly to our website, carmo.com, go to the assessments, you'll find employee satisfaction and retention assessment. If you go there, you can take this assessment. We'll show you what it looks like, and you can actually run this through your enterprise, and we'll help you analyze that whole thing. You'll see something just like this. and you'll see for every single employee that takes it, kind of how they're different snapshots and how you have that conversation. 45 minutes went by really, really fast.
You got to stop talking, man.
I know. I'm happy to compete with you guys. That's usually not the case. I'd love to hear from the comments. We've gotten some great comments from Joe and a few others. Thank you for sharing those. What have you been picking up along the way here? I'd love to hear some nuggets of what you've heard from Sherry Lou or Lester in the course of this conversation. But since we've got about 15 minutes left, let's come back to that title, right? I'd like to maybe we've kind of made a little bit of a journey here. Summarize that for me, Lester, kind of what we talked about and what's now possible, right? That secret.
Yeah, I go back to what Sherry said. We're all looking for like that wow factor in that secret, but the secret's not very hard, right? It is understanding and asking questions. It's actually having dialogue with people and treating them individually. Now, you have 2 employees, it's easier than if you have 10. If you have 10, it's easier than if you have 30. So there's a whole cascade of this isn't easy. But when you look at the organizations that are driving the most employee engagement and alignment and congruency, it is because I think the vision is there. They all join the organization, and I can't stress enough how that's impacted our ability to produce results. Is from the first time you get interviewed, you are hearing about where we're going and why. And if this doesn't sound like this is for you, please don't waste your time, because we're not changing us for you, right? And so it's clear alignment from the beginning. It is communication on an individualized basis. But I think what we're going to find at the end of the day is that, we all know that we have basic human needs, and it's just what floats everybody's boat. And so I think from that second piece of it, I love the assessment, because if you don't ask, you don't know. And, whether Peter Drucker said it or whoever, but you can't improve what you don't measure, right? And so if you're not measuring it and getting it better, then what are you doing? And unfortunately, without that measurement tool, how you're going to find out is what we're experiencing today, is that silent resignation, right? The great resignation. Screw you, I'm out of here, right? And I didn't know why. And then as a leader, you're dumbfounded as to why people are leaving. And so I think it just boils down to really clear communications and management of expectations, that individualized approach. But what you're going to find is that individualized approach can be scaled throughout the organization. But if you never ask the question, you're never going to know.
Mm-hmm. So I want to tell you a quick thing about Lester. Lester and I have been working together for a while. I've come to respect a lot of how Lester thinks about the world. He's got a brand new assessment tool set that he's going to be rolling around employee benefits. Gosh, it is the second biggest expense of all the line items on your profit and loss in your balance sheet. Why don't you get it right so it's doing the perfect thing? Lester, can you take a minute and just talk about that? I mean, I'm pretty excited about what you're rolling out there.
Yeah, I think, again, it goes back to, as an industry, we've done a terrible job of, we've lulled everybody to sleep, right? You're expecting that your renewal is going to be crappy next year, and you're going to get a worse plan for more money. That has been like, thank you, sir, may I have another? And having grown up, I mean, I unfortunately, now the story, right? I've lost both my parents due to cancer. My parents had to file bankruptcy. I am that statistic of, all of those things. But when you start relating it into the topic that we're talking about, when somebody's scared to use the second largest expense that you provide for them because they can't afford it in the first place, what the heck are we actually doing? Mm-hmm. And so I so often get employers that just don't realize that profitability conversation with, we got to do better over here. So this assessment tool is going to allow us the opportunity in a quick, down and dirty way of understanding where somebody is and their likelihood of changing, because as you know, it's hard to get people to want to change. But once people start to make that change, other people will follow. And let's just end it with, the definition of insanity. For 3 decades now, we have continued to give money to an organization, the insurance company, who they call your money, you call it premium, they call it revenue. And then we're shocked that every year the costs go up. Hello, we're not doing this correctly. So, that assessment tool for me is going to be a great way to just kind of get people on the understanding that there is a different way up there. And more importantly, who's ready to change, because you got to start with the few.
So I highly encourage you, if you want to figure out truly how to take care of your people, follow Lester. Just wisdom comes out of everything he says in around that, building that space in your organization to build a better benefits environment, building the honey that's going to attract more. So follow Lester. Sherry and Lou, I want to spend a couple moments on you. The reason I invited Sherry and Lou here is not only are they really good, and I always have a great conversation with them, and Lou is more than willing to tell me the way he sees it, which I actually really appreciate. Is just this idea that they've been around management and leadership for a long time. They've taken that, distilled it. There's a series of principles. I don't want to steal all the thunder here. I would like you to tell them. There's a series of principles that you can use as sort of a measuring stick for just going from good to great every single time. How did I frame that up, Sherry and Lou?
We can tell you've known us for a while, because not only did you say that, you also talked about a personality trait that I have of being straightforward. So I appreciate all of that. But you can tell them
about the 10 principles.
Yes. So we have 10 principles that we've learned over the last now probably 5.5 decades of combined experience with us. But if we were to put all of our team in place, we're probably well over 150 years of combined experience in the leadership training and development landscape. And so what we've done through our training, through our experiences, the goods, the bads, the people leading side of it, and we've put together these 10 principles that we believe that every leader must follow to lead with influence. Those are our empowerment principles. And of course, we utilize that in not only how we lead people, but what we do now is together when we train and we develop other people. Because every one of those principles really value the person. It's a real shock. Now, and especially coming from me, I'm a direct to the point kind of person, but realistically, the bottom line is super important. And I'm going to tell you straight up that that's really it. So the bottom line in a company is important. You're not going to have a corporation. You're not going to be successful unless you hit your metrics. Down 100% bottom line. But the second realist part of this is that you need people to do it. You will find people that'll say, I'm a self-made millionaire. Stay far away. They're lying. They're not. The money had to come from somewhere. Okay. And it wasn't themselves. And so realistically, there's never a self-made millionaire. We need to, as leaders, to follow these types of principles and understand what these principles are, that we can engage into ourselves to develop ourselves first, so that we can exemplify what that looks like to those that we lead, so we can train them. We're only going to develop at the level of our own growth, right? I mean, that's real. We're only going to develop at the level of our own growth. We're only going to be able to tell anybody at the level of our own growth. We can't expect our child to stay away from XYZ if we don't stay away from XYZ. We see it all the time. That's right. We need to do the thing if we want the thing to happen. And so how do we do that? How can we do it effectively? And that's what the 10 principles really do.
Well, I highly encourage you to follow Sherry and Lou as well. I find for myself that I'm constantly looking, how do I step up? How do I climb the next rung of the ladder? I love lots of the quotes that Sherry, you publish on LinkedIn, because it makes me stop for a second and go, yeah, am I really doing that or not? And I'm constantly leveling up. So even if you're just listening from a distance to what Sherry and Lou are saying, I think you'll continually have the opportunity to level up like I have. In the comments, I would love to hear takeaway messages that you've gotten out of this, right? We've talked about the secret not actually being a secret. It's about understanding, a deeper understanding. I'd love to hear in the comments what you've taken away from this conversation. Gosh, we went through 55 minutes really, really fast. And before we leave, there's a couple of people I really want to take a moment to say thank you to. First of all, that is Janine, Prim, and Halal on my team. If this looks polished, if all of the advertisements that have gone out, the posts and all that stuff looked like I have done anything, I will tell you, I've probably done about 2%. That has 98% of it has been done by them. All the orchestration, coordination with Sherry, Lou, and Lester, all that has been done by them. I live and die by their ability to execute. Thank you all so much for what you do. This conversation, I don't think would have been interesting unless we had 350 some odd people sign up. That is a huge vote of confidence for me. Thank you for making me feel fantastic that 351 of you said, hey, an hour of my time is actually interesting to learn about a topic. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for joining us today and for all of the comments that were in the section. And also, Sherry, Lou, and Lester, I appreciate you all taking an hour out of your incredibly busy and very productive lives and professional lives to join with us. I'll leave you with one last thought. If you want to be able to see what is happening in your organization, I encourage you to look at that assessment. We usually charge a lot of money for that, $2,500 to do that assessment. If you're here on this podcast or you're in the replay, go to that link, type in EP21, episode 21, and we'll go through that with you because you clearly understand now what you can do when you can see your people. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Sherry, Lou, Lester, thank you so much for your time as well.
Thank you, Vinay.
Thank you.
Take care, y'all.
You guys.